employs it in the service of his family. He himself eats only a little portion of the food thus purchased, and he goes to hell for those for whom he earned the money in such an irregular way. Wow. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. There is a Bengali proverb. The person for whom I have stolen accuses me of being a thief. Let me read that again. The person for whom I have stolen accuses me of being a thief. The family members for whom an attached person acts in so many criminal ways are never satisfied. In illusion, an attached person serves such family members, and by serving them, he is destined to enter into a hellish condition of life. For example, a thief steals something to maintain his family, and he is caught and imprisoned. This is the sum and substance of material existence and attachment to material society, friendship, and love. Although an attached family man is always engaged in getting money by hook or by crook for the maintenance of his family, he cannot enjoy more than what he could consume even without such criminal activity. A man who eats 8 ounces of foodstuffs may have to maintain. A man who eats 8 ounces of foodstuffs may have to maintain a big family and earn money by any means to support that family. But he himself is not offered more than what he can eat, and sometimes he eats the remnants of that are left after his family members are fed. Even by earning money by unfair means, he cannot enjoy life for himself. That is called the covering illusion of Maya. The process of illusory service to society, country, and community is exactly the same everywhere. The same principle is applicable even to big national leaders. A national leader who is very great in serving his country is sometimes killed by his countrymen because of irregular service. In other words, one cannot satisfy this dependence by this illusory service, although one cannot get out of the service because servant is his constitutional position. A living entity is constitutionally part and parcel of the Supreme Being, but he forgets that he has to render service to the Supreme Being and diverts his attention to serving others. This is called Maya. By serving others, he falsely thinks that he is master. The head of a family thinks of himself as the master of the family, or the leader of a nation thinks of himself as the master of the nation, whereas actually he is serving. And by serving Maya, he is gradually going to hell. Therefore, a sane man should come to the point of Krishna consciousness and engage in the service of the Supreme Lord, applying his whole life, all of his wealth, his entire intelligence, and his full power of speaking. Very good statement. So there's this Bengali proverb. The person for whom I have stolen accuses me of being a thief. The family members for whom an attached person acts in so many criminal ways are never satisfied. In illusion, an attached person serves such family members, and by serving them, he is destined to enter into a hellish condition of life. For example, a thief steals something to maintain his family, and he is caught and imprisoned. This is the sum and substance of material existence and attachment to material society, friendship, and love. Although an attached man is always engaged in getting money by hook or by crook for the maintenance of his family, he cannot enjoy more than what he could consume even without such criminal activities. Very good point. Uh, and so that's why this verse says, he secures money by committing violence here and there. And although he employs it in the service of his family, he himself eats only a little portion of the food thus purchased. And he goes to hell for those who, for those whom he earned the money in such an irregular way. It just means that people are in complete illusion and they are using their full energy and thoughts and desires falsely. So therefore, they end up in a situation like what is stated here. The person for whom I have stolen accuses me of being a thief. It's pretty funny. The family members for whom an attached person acts in so many criminal ways are never satisfied. Okay, so that should be a wake-up call that without Krishna consciousness, all the things that we do for family, for friends, for nation, is basically a waste of time. Okay, so then what should we do? Well, we should be engaged individually and even with our family in devotional service. Then there's no waste of time. But if we just waste our time with the family in sense gratification, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, then we are actually wasting our time. And that is actually sinful. We should never waste our time. Our time should be always used in Krishna consciousness, learning more and more about who Krishna is and how to serve Krishna properly, and how to engage in practical devotional service. And here it says, a thief steals something to maintain his family, and he is caught and imprisoned. This is the sum and substance of material existence, an attachment to material society, friendship, and love. Although an attached family man is always engaged in getting money by hook or by crook for the maintenance of his family, he cannot enjoy more than what he could consume even without such criminal activities. A man who eats 8 ounces of foodstuff may have to maintain a big family and earn money by any means to support that family, but he himself is not offered more than what he can eat. And sometimes he eats the remnants that are left after his family members are fed. Even by earning money by unfair means, he cannot enjoy life for himself. That is called the covering illusion of Maya. Well, that's probably, not probably, that's certainly the life of a materialistic person, especially a man who's attached to his family and always in getting money by hook or by crook for the maintenance of his family. So, further statements here are the following. The process of illusory service to society, country, and community is exactly the same everywhere. The same principles are applicable even to big national leaders. A national leader who is very great in serving his country is sometimes killed by his countrymen because of irregular service. In other words, one cannot satisfy his dependents by this illusory service, although one cannot get out of the service because servant is his constitutional position. That's a very interesting statement. Although he cannot get out of the service because servant is his constitutional position.
Mhm.
Well, what that's pointing to is we're serving the wrong persons.
Mm.
Now, if we serve Krishna, then that service becomes significant and very productive for everyone. But if we just serve the family members or our ethnic, let's say, people, basically, not only it's a waste of time, but it's actually foolish because they will not really they will not really appreciate what you're doing. Like, for example, let's say there's a man that for his whole life, let's say his adult life, let's say for maybe 40 years, 50 years, working for a company. And when his time comes for retiring, the company has a party. And during the party, they give him a nice watch for serving 40 years in the company. Is that, well, he was also earning money by working, but has he made any spiritual advancement by doing that? No. Well, he faithfully worked for the company. He helped the company prosper. He earned an honest living, but he didn't really make any spiritual advancement by doing that. And what does he get in the end? Well, they might give him a watch or they might give him a pension or something. And then they'll thank him, and then the man just goes and waits to die. That is not really a spiritual life. Spiritual life should be spiritual from the earliest time of life, where the parents teach the son or the daughter to be always coming to the temple, chanting, and also always doing service and controlling the mind and senses and engaging them in the service of the Lord. That means that they're using their time correctly. But simply working for some company, earning a living, maintaining a family, that might be considered a heroic person who does that. But they do not actually make any spiritual advancement. So therefore, they have a shock at the moment of death where they have to have a repeated mundane life again, but maybe not as a human being. But this is like a horror story. You spend your whole life maintaining family, relatives, and so forth. And in the end, what do you have to show for it? You take birth as a dog. And now, in the body of the dog, you're still serving, but there's there's no more family. Your family, has because you're in a different family now. You become a family of dogs. So uh, what is the actual benefit of all the service that you did? Zero. Uh, it didn't gain. You didn't gain anything of eternal life. You're still in. The person is still in the uh, uh, captured by Maya and still in the repetition of birth, death, old age, and disease. So ultimately, people have to decide what is actually real success in life. And if they consider success, making a lot of money and having nice cars and houses and a big bank account. And so when you don't have money, you're worried about money. When you do have money, you're worried about losing it. So both ways, you're in anxiety. So therefore, Krishna is going to give everyone their minimum needs. It's guaranteed. Everybody will get their minimum needs by Krishna's mercy. Like the animals, they don't do any work, but yet they get their minimal needs. When I say they don't do any work, they're not engaged in working for some company or like that. Of course, they do maintain their family to a certain degree, but somehow or other, everybody is being taken care of by Krishna's mercy. The animals, the birds, the bees, etc. And human beings also, they have their minimum needs set. Their minimum needs are given by Krishna. Now, if you try to take more than what you actually need, that means that you're going to engage in some kind of sinful activity, and one becomes accrues a lot of karma in that way, and that will keep one stuck in a cycle of birth and death. So one should be satisfied with the minimum maintenance, and then they can maximize their engagement in devotional service. That is the correct way of living. Minimal sense gratification, maximum devotional service. Now, when we say minimal sense gratification, it's not gross sense gratification for personal, happiness, or whatever you call it, personal sense gratification. But you maintain the senses, but you use them in the service of the Lord. Okay. So by doing that, you're not committing sinful activities. You're dovetailing everything in the service of the Lord. And you have a simple life. It's not a complicated life. And why? Because you're guaranteed, every living entity is guaranteed their minimal needs by the laws of material nature. So if we live a life of Krishna consciousness without extraneous, let's say, heroic efforts, our needs will be met, and we'll be able to have a peaceful life and have time for Krishna consciousness. If we endeavor to get more and more money and surround ourselves with all kinds of different gadgets and houses and cars and yachts and things like that, all that effort that we're performing is not only a waste of time, but it's accruing bad karma, and we're going to have to suffer for it. So it's not really a successful life to do that. A successful life is minimizing our sense gratification and maximizing our time, our engagement in devotional service. In that way, okay, we might not be rich, we might not be famous, but we are uh, developing more and more love for Krishna, by which Krishna guarantees the maintenance of the devotee, and if the devotee is serious about Krishna consciousness, they can go back to Godhead when they die. So uh, this requires education. Simply eating, sleeping, mating, and defending like an animal is not the goal of life. Animals also have families. Animals also eat, sleep, mate, and defend, and so forth. The real life is when we become Krishna conscious and we dovetail everything in our life in Krishna consciousness. Then, at the moment of death, instead of seeing Yamaraj, we see Krishna and we go back to the spiritual world. Now, some people will say, well, that's all a bunch of fairy tales. That's your narrative. Everybody has their own narrative. But that means that such people that speak like that and think like that, they are spiritually bankrupt. We are in this material world, subject to birth, death, old age, and disease. Now, how are we going to get out of this situation? That should be our thought. And the way to get out of that situation is given to us in the Bhagavad Gita, the greatest book in the history of the world. Why? Because it's teaching us how to get free from the cycle of birth and death. And it's not that difficult. It's much easier to follow the instructions in Bhagavad Gita than to have a materialistic life where we're always struggling to maintain our possessions and family responsibilities and this thing and that thing. Responsibilities to family, to nation, to neighbors, to so many different things. And sometimes you see that there are people who are engaged in let's say, a type of activity that is mundane. Like some people, they want to be, they want to serve a dog. So, because they're lonely, so they think, well, I won't be lonely if I buy a dog. Okay. So they get a dog, and now they have to take care of the dog. They have to take the dog out for a walk. They have to feed the dog. They have to clean the stool of the dog. They have to always make sure that the dog is safe and so forth. Their whole life is consumed by the dog. So, is that the purpose of life? No, it's not. And by the way, the dogs don't need our help. They can exist very well without being in a house and under the control of the human being. Dogs know how to live life, a full life, and have their own family, and have a full life. They don't need human beings, but human beings, they think that okay, well, if I have a dog, then I won't be lonely, and then their whole life is consumed by taking care of the dog. And what happens is, at the moment of death, they remember the dog because they spent so many years taking care of the dog, worrying about the health of the dog, and even at the moment of death, they remember the dog and have to take birth again as a dog themselves. So we have to be very careful. I knew this one devotee lady. She purchased a dog. As soon as she purchased the dog, almost all of her time was consumed by the dog. Taking the dog out for a walk, waiting for the dog to pass stool, picking up the stool. You're not allowed to, uh, you know, let your dog pass stool outside. They pass stool outside, but you have to pick it up and take it away. You can't, and if they get caught, then there's some kind of a fine for doing that. So all of a sudden, one's consciousness is consumed by the dog. And if you keep the dog until the moment of death, then you're going to remember the dog and become a dog. So when it says here that he secures money by committing violence here and there, and although he employs it in the service of his family, he himself eats only a little portion of the food thus purchased, and he goes to hell for those for whom he earned the money in such an irregular way. Therefore, Prabhupada quotes the Bengali proverb, "The person for whom I have stolen accuses me of being a thief." The family members for whom an attached person acts in so many criminal ways are never satisfied. In illusion, an attached person serves such family members, and by serving them, he is destined to enter into a hellish condition of life. For example, a thief steals something to maintain his family, and he is caught and imprisoned. This is the sum and substance of material existence and attachment to material society, friendship, and love. Although an attached family man is always engaged in getting money by hook or by crook for the maintenance of his family, he cannot enjoy more than what he could consume even without such criminal activities. A man who eats 8 ounces of foodstuff may have to maintain a big family and earn money by any means to support that family, but he himself does not offer more than what he can eat. And sometimes he eats the remnants that are left after his family members are fed. Even by earning money by unfair means, he cannot enjoy life for himself. That is called the covering illusion of Maya. The process of illusory service to society, country, and community is exactly the same everywhere. The same principle is applicable even to big national leaders. A national leader who is very great in serving his country is sometimes killed by his countrymen because of irregular service. Oh, that's the example of Gandhi. In other words, one cannot satisfy his dependents by this illusory service, although one cannot get out of the service because servant is his constitutional position. Okay, so then what's the meaning of life if we can't get out of that type of service? Because that's the constitutional position. So it said, a living entity is constitutionally part and parcel of the Supreme Being, but he forgets that he has to render service to the Supreme Being and diverts his attention to serving others. This is called Maya. So that's what the problem is right there. Mm. By serving others, he falsely thinks that he is master, the head of the family, thinks of himself as the master of the family, or the leader of the nation, thinks himself as the master of the nation. Whereas actually he's serving, and by serving Maya, he is gradually going to hell. Therefore, a sane man should come to the point of Krishna consciousness and engage in the service of the Supreme Lord, applying his whole life, all of his wealth, his entire intelligence, and his full power of speaking. Okay, so let's look at our president, Mr. Trump. He's 80 years old. He just got elected to be president again for another 4 years. Do you think that was the wise thing to do? He's already 80 years old. So he will spend another 4 years serving his country. And there's so many issues that he has to deal with. And he won't have time at all for Krishna consciousness. He'll be consumed by all the problems of leading a nation or working to maintain, the needs of the nation. What is he doing for himself? Well, he's eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But is he making any spiritual advancement? No. Every day he has to deal with the problems of the nation, political problems. So he hasn't really understood what's the purpose of life. Simply being, winning becoming a president of a country at 80 years old. He is 80 years old. And having another 4 years as president of the country, that's not a very smart thing to do. Because he's not going to really have any time to become Krishna conscious. He's 80 years old. That means that at any time he could die. And is his service appreciated? Well, he almost died by being shot at. Somebody wanted to kill him, and he almost died. But yet he's still continuing, not getting the message. The message is that he should give up all the political stuff and become Krishna conscious. But no, he continues getting elected for another 4 years. So by the time he finishes that period, he'll be 84 years, right? Who knows if he'll actually get to 84 years? And most of the time, he's only going to be concerned with the problems of the country. He's not really going to be involved in any Krishna conscious activities. So you see how people get caught by Maya. He is overwhelmed by the control of Maya, definitely. And he's not really engaged in any activities that are beneficial for his spiritual life. How can you be when you're a politician? You have to lie. You have to do so many things that are sinful to maintain your position. And there's vicious competition. So you always have to be careful about the people that you're working with. There's enviousness, and there's lust, and there's greed. So, what kind of life is that? It's really horrible. Okay, so, there was once a person who, I've talked about this before, he had a spiritual master. And he was sitting down with his spiritual master and talking. And he said, Gurudev, my only desire is to be able to sit down like this with you and always hear your transcendental lectures and and be engaged in your service. But first, I have to conquer Asia Minor, and then I have to not conquer this other country and that country. And after all that, then I'll come back and sit down and be with you. And Guru Dev said, but you're sitting down with me right now. And you are with me. Why do you have to do all those things? So he said, no, I have to do all these things. So, but he started doing all those things and he never went back to Guru Dev. He died in the process. So the real urgency in life is to become Krishna conscious. There's no real urgency of becoming president of a country or becoming a big rich man or becoming a famous person. The real urgency is to become Krishna conscious. But if you become so engaged in mundane activities that you don't have time for Krishna consciousness, that is a failed life. So that's why in this verse, it's in purport, it says, in illusion, an attached person serves such family members, and by serving them, he is destined to enter into a hellish condition of life. For example, a thief steals something to maintain his family, and he is caught and imprisoned. This is the sum and substance of material existence, an attachment to material society, friendship, and love. Although an attached family man is always engaged in getting money by hook or by crook for the maintenance of his family, he cannot enjoy more than what he could consume even without such criminal activities. A man who eats 8 ounces of foodstuffs may have to maintain a big family and earn money by any means to support that family, but he himself is not offered more than what he can eat, and sometimes he eats the remnants that are left after his family members are fed. Even by earning money by unfair means, he cannot enjoy life for himself. That is called the covering illusion of Maya. The process of illusory service to society, country, and community is exactly the same everywhere. The same principle is applicable even to big national leaders. A national leader who is very great in serving his country is sometimes killed by his countrymen because of irregular service. In other words, one cannot satisfy his dependents by this illusory service, although one cannot get out of the service because servant is his constitutional position. Okay, now that's an interesting statement. So now the question can be asked, then what is our purpose in life? What should we do in this life? A living entity is constitutionally part and parcel of the Supreme Being, but he forgets that. He has to render service to the Supreme Being and divert his attention to serving others. One second. A living entity is constitutionally part and parcel of the Supreme Being, but he forgets that he has to render service to the Supreme Being and diverts his attention to serving others. This is called Maya. By serving others, he falsely thinks that he is master, the head of the family, thinks himself as the master of the family, or actually he is serving. And by serving Maya, he is gradually going to hell. Therefore, a sane man should come to the point of Krishna consciousness and engage in the service of the Supreme Lord, applying his whole life, all of his wealth, his entire intelligence, and his full power of speaking. All right, well, let's look at our president. He has family. He's president of the most powerful country in the world. He just got elected to another 4 years of being president. He is 80 years old. Is that the right thing to do? Well, he thinks it is. And the people that elected him think it is. But actually, it's not good. He's still under the illusion of Maya. First of all, he thinks he's going to live another 4 years. And there's no guarantee of that. And also, he's 80 years old. So why should he be completely consumed in politics for another 4 years? And what will he have to show for it? He was already almost killed by an assassin, right? And in other words, everybody doesn't really appreciate what he's doing, right? So he should think clearly, and say, wait a minute, another 4 years of being engaged in politics and dealing with all these lusty, greedy people, and always having to go to meetings and giving speeches about mundane things. What is he going to get by doing that? Well, bad karma, that's all. He's going to end up with a lot of bad karma, and he's going to be stuck in the cycle of birth and death. So that is not really the service that he should be doing. He is a servant. He's serving his country. He's serving all the inhabitants of that country in one way or another. But that type of service is a waste of time. Okay, so what is the proper service? Well, he should engage in devotional service and help others in this country become Krishna conscious. Is he doing that? No, he's not doing that. He's not. Well, let's say there was Gandhi. Gandhi was a person that did have some spiritual, let's say, knowledge, but he was assassinated. Now, why was Gandhi assassinated? We should think of that. Here's a man who, most of his life, he was engaged in serving his country. And, obviously that means the inhabitants of this country. Why did someone kill him? And the person that killed him was a Hindu. It wasn't like a Muslim. Well, because he wanted to, let's say, well, first of all, he had no business and being 80. He also was I think he was like 80 years old when he was assassinated. The normal life, let's say, program should be you're up to about 20 years, you engage in youth and education, maybe up to 25 years. Then you get married and you spend another 25, 30 years being married, taking care of the family. And then you should begin to downsize everything. And by the time you're 50 years old, you should completely downsize and be completely engaged in devotional service. And then up until the end of life, you're always engaged in devotional service to the Lord. And when you die, you're able to remember Krishna and you go back to God. So that's more or less a successful life. Not more or less. It is a successful life. But if someone is 80 years old and he gets elected for another 4 years in the service of the country, that's a big mistake. Okay, he'll die completely consumed by the problems of the country and not the problem of how he's going to become liberated from cycle of birth and death. You see, so you cannot say that he is successful. He keeps putting himself in this position of a controller, but actually, that's what keeps us in the material world. We should surrender to the real controller, Krishna. By the way, is he helping anyone? We're talking about Trump now. Is he helping anyone become Krishna conscious? No. He's helping some people to become rich, but he's not really helping anyone to become Krishna conscious. In his speeches, and he gives a lot of speeches. In other words, his preaching is not bona fide. He's just talking about the body and maintenance of the body. So here we see he's, in one sense, considered the most successful person in the world, but in a real sense, he's the biggest failure in the world, right? Because he's going to spend another 4 years managing the material desires of a country instead of thinking about what's going to happen to me. I'm getting older and I'm getting closer to death. What should I really be doing? Okay, so he's going to die with his boots on. In other words, he's going to die serving what? His nation instead of serving Krishna. And that's what it comes down to. He secures money by committing violence here and there, and although he employs it in the service of his family, he himself eats only a little portion of the food that's purchased, and he goes to hell for those for whom he earned the money in such an irregular way. And this Bengali proverb is, the person for whom I have stolen accuses me of being a thief. That is the material life. The family members for whom an attached person acts in so many criminal ways are never satisfied. In illusion, an attached person serves such family members, and by serving them, he is destined to enter into a hellish condition of life. Yeah, so there are many devotees also. After they become devotees, they have, they may have like an extended family, aunties and uncles and cousins and so forth. So, all those family members are not really happy that he's become Krishna conscious, because he's going to spend most of his time now maintaining Krishna consciousness. And they might be proud. Some of them might be proud that he's Krishna conscious, but most of them are envious that he's Krishna conscious, and that he has a very spiritual life, but not anymore, maintaining the extended family. So there are many devotees in that situation, where their extended families are upset that he's become a devotee and not paying attention to maintaining not only his own family, but the extended family. So they become angry and envious. Well, this is unfortunate. Just like, Prabhupada, he becomes Krishna conscious. I mean, he was always Krishna conscious, but he takes sannyas. Now, one of his sons, he had 5 kids, and one of the sons was always loyal to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada really liked him. But his wife and the other members of his family, the other 4 children that he had, they were not really, happy that he became, a pure devotee. They couldn't even understand what it means to be a pure devotee, and they did not really, uh, let's say, they did not really understand what Prabhupada did. I once went to somebody took me to see one of Prabhupada's relatives, and he had a business. And when we went, he had this, I don't know, he had some kind of business where people would sit down and manufacture something. So when we went to see him, one of the devotees took me to see him. And, he said, oh, this is Prabhupada's cousin, And, but he was a complete Mayavad, a complete materialist. And he had a big picture. He didn't have a big picture of Prabhupada in his workshop. He had a big picture of, I think it was Gandhi or something. Right?
You had mentioned in past about Shankaracharya, I think.
Huh?
Earlier you had mentioned about the Shankaracharya picture, I think.
Well,
something.
Yeah, there's some picture that it wasn't Prabhupada at all. So the devotee I was with asked him, he said, well, why don't you have a picture of Prabhupada? I said, no, I have this pictures for my workers.
It's a smart answer.
Yeah, very clever man. Yeah, so his father is his relative, Prabhupada was a pure devotee, but yet he has a picture of Gandhi or somebody else in his workshop. So in other words, some of the members of Prabhupada's family were complete mundane persons. One son was somewhat Krishna conscious, and Prabhupada liked him very much. But most of his family, including his wife, were not so. I mean, they were Hindus, but they were not really gung ho about Prabhupada, and what he was doing, including his wife, So he didn't really have a very strong relationship with his family, although he set aside money for his family, in his will, for maintenance of his wife. He never ignored her. But the family itself did not really appreciate what Prabhupada did, except one son. One son did. He had 5 children. You never hear about it. You hear about the one son that was always, loyal to Prabhupada, but the other members of the family, they were not really, let's say, interested in what Prabhupada was doing. So this is a very nice proverb, Bengali proverb. The person for whom I have stolen accuses me of being a thief. that is material life. There's a man, he has a family, he works hard. Sometimes he might even engage in being a thief to maintain his family. And the family members turn against him. They're never satisfied by his service. And that's why it says the family members for whom an attached person acts in so many criminal ways are never satisfied. In illusion, an attached person serves such family members, and by serving them, he is destined to enter into a hellish condition of life. For example, a thief steals something to maintain his family, and he is caught and imprisoned. This is the sum and substance of material existence and attachment to material society, friendship, and love. There it is. That's just what life is like. So, what is the right way to live? That's the whole point. The right way to live is to be educated in Krishna consciousness and then engage in practical devotional service the rest of your life. So that doesn't mean you give up your family. That doesn't mean you ignore people. No, but you're no longer overwhelmed by material sense gratification. You only gratify the senses minimally to maintain life and soul together. But all your activity is directed toward pleasing Krishna. So, family is still there, work is still there, responsibility is still there, but it's all directed toward pleasing Krishna rather than personal sense gratification. So you can have a full life. What is a full life? Well, you're born, and then you get educated, then you get a job, then you get married, and eventually you retire, and then you die. One can be Krishna conscious in every one of those, let's say, periods of one's life. Or one can ignore Krishna consciousness in all those periods of life. That's a decision that we have to make. It's all depending on the education and who we associate with. So here Prabhupada gives the example that a thief steals something to maintain his family, and he is caught and imprisoned. This is the sum and substance of material existence and attachment to material society, friendship, and love. Although an attached family man is always engaged in getting money by hook or crook for the maintenance of his family, he cannot enjoy more than what he could consume even without such criminal activities. Yeah. So Krishna has already set aside for every living entity. That means the birds, the bees, the animals, and every human being, their minimal needs. So you don't have to become a crook or a thief to maintain your family. You just have to live honestly and be satisfied with whatever Krishna has set aside for you. And he has set aside for every living being, all the animals and birds and so forth, and also for every human being. So if we simply work honestly and not be envious of anyone and to develop Krishna consciousness, then we will always have our minimal needs. They'll come naturally by the mercy of the Lord. We should have that faith. And what use is it that when you die, you have, let's say, millions of dollars in the bank? Does that mean that you're a success? No, that means you're a failure. If you were able to make so much money, you should have used it in service of Krishna. You should not just keep it in the bank and give it to your relatives. Just like I had an uncle who worked hard, and he had a certain amount of money that he had accumulated. And when he died, of course, all that money went to his wife. But he had a son who was a real rascal. And he harassed his mother, who inherited all the money of the father who died. He harassed her, and she died rather quickly also. And then the boy got all the money, and in 3 or 4 months, all the money was lost. Right? He spent it on all kinds of nonsense things. And the final insult was that he bought a racehorse. And the racehorse, and he named it after his father. And the racehorse broke its leg and it died. And now there was no money at all. He spent all the money that his father worked a whole lifetime to make in about 3 or 4 or 5 months. And there's nothing to show for it, So that means that it's the father's fault because he never taught his son to be Krishna conscious. The father himself was not Krishna conscious. So everything he accumulated was wasted and lost in a short period of time by his son, who was a rascal. And he was taught to be a rascal. Not the father taught him to be a rascal, but he was not able to train his son properly. So everything that the man did, all the money he made, it was all gone in a couple of months. And it's just a failed life. And the son is a bum, you know. I don't know if he's still alive, but he ended up being like a street person. Okay, so are there any questions?
About the Gandhi Maharaj, he was a 78-year-old when
78 years.
when he was died.
They killed him
Killed. When he was killed. He was
by
78.
his own people. He wasn't a Muslim.
He was 78.
Yeah.
That saying is very profound, Maharaj, that we should not die with our boots on. So,
Yeah, meaning still engaged in all kinds of mundane activities. You see, Gandhi dedicated most of his life for his nation, right? And what happens? He's assassinated. A man who dedicated almost his whole life for his nation, he was assassinated, right? And why? Well, because of politics. That's why. Politics means friends and enemies. So when you're a politician, you're going to have friends and you're going to have enemies. If you're a devotee, well, there are always going to be enemies, but you're going to be protected by the mercy of Krishna. But if you're not a devotee, then you're not going to be protected by Krishna. So it's a very precarious, very dangerous life. And here's a man who almost his whole life he is serving his country. And a country member, one of his country members, kills him, murders him, right? Because he wasn't satisfied with the service that Gandhi was doing. It's horrible. By the way, Prabhupada sent a letter to Gandhi. And he said, now you're very famous. Why don't you come with me and we will both preach Krishna consciousness? No answer to that letter. And not so far after that, Gandhi was assassinated. Prabhupada offered him and said, you and I will go together and we will preach Krishna consciousness. He said, you are now so famous, people will listen to it. People are listening to what you say. So I will join with you and we will go and preach Krishna consciousness. Gandhi never answered that letter, and not so far after that, he was killed. So Prabhupada could see the writing on the wall. Gandhi couldn't, because he was so, let's say, enamored, in love with being a politician. He could never really become a pure devotee. Although he dressed like a pure devotee, he, in many ways, acted like a pure devotee, but he was never actually able to give up sense gratification. Because of that, he was murdered by his own people. Okay, so thank you very much. Are there any questions? You can ask them. What is our takeaway today? The process of illusory service to society, country, and community is exactly the same everywhere. The same principles are applicable even to big national leaders. A national leader who was who was very great in serving his country is sometimes killed. Oh, that's Gandhi by his countrymen because of irregular service. In other words, one cannot satisfy his dependence by this illusory service, although one cannot get out of the service because servant is his constitutional position. That's an interesting statement. It says, one cannot satisfy his dependence by this illusory service, although one cannot get out of the service because servant is his constitutional position. What does that mean? Well, it means that, yeah, our constitutional position is to be a servant, but we should understand that the best service is to serve Krishna. And that's why he says, living as he's constitutionally part and parcel of the Supreme Being, but he forgets that he has to render service to the Supreme Being and diverts his attention to serving others. This is called Maya. That's exactly what happened with Gandhi. By serving others, he falsely thinks that he is master. The head of a family thinks himself as the master of the family, or a leader of a nation, like Gandhi, thinks himself as master of the nation. Whereas actually he is serving, and by serving Maya, he is gradually going to hell. Therefore, a sane man should come to the point of Krishna consciousness and engage in the service of the Supreme Lord, applying his whole life, all of his wealth, his entire intelligence, and his full power of speaking. Gandhi had the opportunity to do that. Even Prabhupada wrote a letter to him. He said, okay, now you're so famous. We can join together and preach Krishna consciousness. Gandhi never answered that letter, and not so far after that, he was assassinated. He should have taken the hint Prabhupada was giving him. Now you are very famous. Well, use your fame to spread Krishna consciousness. No, he didn't listen to Prabhupada. Okay, so that's something we should think about very seriously. So it says, this is our takeaway today. Therefore, a sane man should come to the point of Krishna consciousness and get engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord, applying his whole life, all of his wealth, his entire intelligence, and his full power of speaking. There you go. That's what we should meditate on today. In other words, a person who doesn't do this is not a sane person. He's insane. They're sane and insane. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much. Have a very good day today. And don't be insane. Be sane. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.